So Heartland is a thing. That's right, I get to talk about another really cheesy or campy show under the guise of art or philosophy, when really, I just want to talk about how much I love it. While that is actually true, I do have an ulterior motive for why I chose Heartland for this episode, and that has to do with the fact that it's New Year's Eve. Heartland is probably the corniest thing I've ever seen on television, and it's Canada's longest running 1-hour drama ever, which is kind of mind-boggling. I mean, I love it, but we're coming up on 14 seasons, and that's a long time for any show to run, especially one about horses. I mean, I get it. There are a lot of horse-related sports and events, and you can show them all, but 214 episodes across 13 years and counting seems a little extreme. But I'm not here to disparage the show on the grounds of how much you can do with horses or how long you can maintain quality. No, the truth is, I really like this show. And if you're thinking I'm going to talk about how you can like something while still thinking it's terrible or bad, think again, because I already did that shit with High School Musical. And that was a good episode too. You should check it out. In that episode, I talked about High School Musical as being my guilty pleasure. Oftentimes people talk about guilty pleasures. We all have them. Things that we know are terrible for us, but we do anyway because they fill us with some kind of joy. This can range from eating chocolate cake as a midnight snack when you know it's bad for your health, or listening to a particular music or artist. Maybe it's watching a trilogy of movies about a high school basketball star sing in front of his friends about how he's afraid that they will judge him if he sings in front of them, while they're also singing. Anyway, but like most people, I have more than one. For This Is a Thing, I usually try to pick a show or angle and try to talk about why it was meaningful to me or why it might be meaningful to others. Through the use of analysis and academics and the occasional help from an old dead person in the form of a philosopher, I try to get to the point or theme of a story and why I think that piece of media or literature is excellent or representative of a change or an idea in media literacy. But I don't want to do that this time around. What I do want to do is talk about escapism, gratification, and enjoying guilty pleasures. And so today, I want to talk about Heartland. Heartland is your basic 1-hour drama. It's based off of the not Canadian-based book series of the same name. The book series is written by Lauren Brooke, which is actually a fake name used by the two authors of the series. There are 26 books in this series, all written between 2000 and 2008. In 2007, the book was adapted into a show by executive producer and writer Heather Conkey. The show was created for the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, or CBC, and the setting was transplanted from Colorado to Alberta, Canada. Although the book series was geared towards young readers or young adult audiences, the TV show was created to be more of a family drama, but drew on the source material for a lot of its early seasons. However, certain aspects were changed, ranging from just names to drastic story events. Now coming up on its 14th season, the show has long surpassed the books in terms of content and has moved on to become its own separate entity with its own canon that is often viewed as distinctly separate from the books and its characters. I haven't read any of the books, but from what I can tell, it does seem to be very different in terms of character portrayal and tone. Of course, because it was produced by the CBC, all of the actors are Canadian and all of the production does take place in Canada. The show follows Amy Fleming and her family as they deal with the loss of her mother during a car accident while trying to save a horse. As Amy recovers, her sister returns home from New York to help her grandfather look after her. They are also joined by Ty, a troubled teen who is offered the chance to work off his probation by working at the farm. As Amy learns to deal with her overbearing sister Lou, her grandfather Jack, and her strained relationship with Ty, as well as the return of her father, she begins to find that she has the same gift for horses that her mother had. By helping horses using her mother's methods, Amy finds that the horses she helps heal her as much as she heals them. And this is the setup premise anyway. It goes on from there, and on, and on, and on, and on. There isn't really anything particularly jarring or thought-provoking in the story, nor are any of the aspects of craft overly innovative. Not that the craft is bad by any means, but when looking at Heartland with a critical eye, it becomes apparent that the show is pretty average, perhaps even boring. And this is probably one of its primary draws to me and why I like it. The show doesn't really require a lot of brain power to watch, and you know that every character's problems will probably be solved by the end of the 44-minute runtime, with the occasional cliffhanger. But the show is meant to be heartwarming, and it's crafted in a way that is almost perfectly inoffensive. I'm sure it probably offends someone out there, but it's impossible to please everyone. A show like Heartland that doesn't really require a critical eye, or at least how I watch it, is sometimes exactly what I need, which brings us back to guilty pleasures and gratification. Let's face it, this year has sucked. For a lot of people, this lockdown thing has been hard financially, and being stuck inside or unable to be physical or creative in the usual ways causes stress. People have been pushed to their limits in terms of finance, politics, mental health, relationships, and let's not forget the actual physical health problems of the virus as the root of all this and the added stress that causes. This year has been a lot for anyone to handle, and sometimes when it gets too much, you want to sit down and watch a show about a Canadian girl that loves horses, goddammit! Or, you know, whatever works for you. The point of art is the experience that you have while interacting with it. A lot of the time I interact with art with intentionality. I try to actively listen to music, participate as an audience member in theater, or play video games undistracted. The point is to deliberately experience art and understand what is being conveyed, or to critically think about why you dislike a piece of art, which is just as important and valuable. This requires a lot of energy, and with all the aforementioned hardship, I can't do that all the time. Hell, I can't do that all the time even without the added stress of a global pandemic, and all the effects that brings. No one could. As much as I encourage a certain level of analysis in media literacy and artistic understanding, sometimes you just shouldn't do those things. Guilty pleasures are often something we think of as trashy, and that's fine. As I discussed in the High School Musical episode, there's no such thing as bad art. But I think that there is a case to be made for watching simplistic art because it does not require a large amount of brain power to understand. Heartland does not require me to look deeper into the art or language used to discover the deeper meaning behind a particular scene. It does not require a closer look into scene composition or camera angle or any part of the craft. When I watch Heartland, I understand character interaction and basic interpersonal problems of a family and their friends. It's easy and it provides me with, for however a small amount of time, an escape. Not that you couldn't apply your discerning eye to Heartland. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could find something about why Heartland is important. Perhaps something along the lines of what such a long-running series has done to change or enhance Canadian media, but as I said, sometimes I just want to escape. And this is the key. Oftentimes, escapism is used in a negative way, escaping your problems by burying yourself into something. Obviously, this is not what I'm referring to. If you're using art as your means of actively avoiding your problems, then you definitely have an issue and you should seek help. But for most people, escapism has more to do with gratification. Simply put, people require a way to receive pleasure from the things they do. By accomplishing tasks, we feel good about ourselves and gratified in our work. But there are other forms of gratification. Intrinsic gratification is when there is a joy derived simply because of that thing. In this case, we're talking about the interaction between art and an observer. In more basic terms, if you're deriving joy from something, such as watching Heartland, then on some level you're getting gratification from watching that show. This kind of joy without needing or requiring much effort is perfectly fine, and I encourage it. A large part of why people play games or read fantasy is to experience something that is not real and leave behind the mundane. Now, Heartland is not fantastical at all, but for me it's more of an escape into something that requires little effort to enjoy. It's like being wrapped up in a warm blanket of feel-good television and saccharine drama. Now, remember how I said I wasn't going to analyze Heartland? Well, I lied. This is the part with the old dead guy that's usually a philosopher. Mikhail Bakhtin was a Russian philosopher from the 1800s. He came up with this idea called the carnivalesque or carnival. The idea was that for a certain amount of time, the average person should be allowed to give up the regular social mores that govern how society functions and just let loose. He was referring to the societal need for things such as the Festival of Fools and the benefits that these kinds of events have on how societies function. And we still have carnivals or carnival in many countries. In the United States they have it too, they just call it Mardi Gras, or going to Las Vegas. By letting loose and partying, Bakhtin argued that people would be willing to return to the norms and laws of everyday life, knowing that there were certain times where it was socially acceptable to let loose. Escapism in art is the same idea. There are certain expectations that we're supposed to watch or appreciate only high art. But applying Bakhtin's principle here, I think it's more than fine to escape into something that is not considered high art. There's no such thing as bad art anyway, but this is just another form of letting loose. If this is what keeps you sane and brings you joy, then great. We all need the chance to unwind, especially after this past year. And we shouldn't have to argue on the grounds of good or bad art because sometimes that isn't the point. You're escaping from the world, and that includes people who ask questions you don't want to deal with. Why are you wasting your time watching that? Because sometimes I need a break from the noise of the world and the garbage that fills it for a while, and I shouldn't have to justify how I spend my time finding gratification and joy. Or in other words, fuck you, I'm watching Heartland. And that is why Heartland is my escape, and why it's okay to have something that is just that, an escape. I really wanted to share with everyone that analysis of everything is great, but it's okay to just enjoy something without having to overthink it, and that enjoyment of art can sometimes be just for the fun of it. And yes, I did some analysis anyway because that's how I am, but I also like sharing my guilty pleasures, and if you don't have one, you can totally share mine. I like to play guitar and write music while I watch Heartland because it doesn't require a lot of my attention. It's kind of soothing in its simplicity. Remember to try and find joy in even the little things, and Happy New Year. Hey! Thanks for watching that video. Hit that like button like you're wrapping yourself in your own blanket of escapism, and feel free to share it if you can. I had a lot of fun talking about this because Heartland really is one of my guilty pleasures. I'd love to hear about your guilty pleasures down in the comments, so hit me up. You can always catch more awesome episodes of This Is a Thing and our weekly podcast right here on Cinemaster's Ultimate Timeline.